Ryan's Office Revenge. The envelope was sitting on my desk Monday morning, thin as a parking ticket, and about as welcome. I picked it up and knew immediately something was wrong. After 20 years in corporate finance and 8 years in the Army before that, you develop a sense for when someone's trying to insult your intelligence. "Year-end bonus," Kevin Walsh said as he walked past my office. He didn't stop, didn't make eye contact, just kept walking like he'd done me some kind of favor. "My name is Brian Foster. I'm 47 years old, senior financial controller here in Chicago, and I've been managing this department long enough to know what a real bonus looks like. This wasn't it." I opened the envelope. $75. Not $750. Not $7,500. 75. The printed note inside said, "Thanks for your dedication this year," with no signature, no personal touch, nothing that acknowledged I'd been here for 6 years, or that I manage 8 people who depend on me to look out for them. Last year, my bonus was $20,500. The year before that, $2,300. This year, with company profits up 12% and my department handling 3 major acquisitions without missing a beat, I get $75. Something was seriously wrong. I walked down the hall to check with Michelle Parker in finance. She was at her desk, staring at an identical envelope with the same defeated expression I probably had. "Did everyone get their bonuses yet?" I asked quietly. She looked around, then leaned closer. "Yeah, we all got them. Same amount as you, I'm guessing. 75? She nodded, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Kevin told us budget was tight this year. Company-wide cuts." She paused, then added, "But I heard the sales team got their full bonuses. Marketing, too." I felt my jaw tighten. "Just our department got cut? Looks like it." Michelle glanced toward Kevin's corner office. "He said we should be grateful to get anything at all in this economy." I thanked her and walked back to my office, my mind already working. Something didn't add up. Our department had delivered record performance this year. We'd streamlined operations, cut costs by 8%, and managed 3 complex mergers without a single compliance issue. If anyone deserved full bonuses, it was us. I sat down at my computer and pulled up the budget reports. Being senior financial controller has its advantages. I've got access to everything. What I saw made my stomach drop. The bonus allocation for our department was clearly marked, $45,000. 8 people getting $75 each meant $600 total paid out. Where was the other $44,400? I started digging deeper, following the money trail like I used to follow supply chains in Afghanistan. Numbers don't lie, and they don't hide well when you know where to look. That's when I found the vendor payments. Kevin had been approving invoices for something called Walsh Consulting Solutions for the past 3 years. The name should have been a red flag, same last name as Kevin. But I'd trusted him. Big mistake. I pulled the detailed records. Walsh Consulting Solutions had been billing us monthly for employee engagement services and performance enhancement programs. The invoices were always just under $5,000, perfectly positioned to avoid the additional approval requirements that kick in at higher amounts. Smart, calculated, deliberate. The funny thing was, I'd never seen any consultants, never attended any programs, never heard anyone mention these services. In 6 years working under Kevin, not once had I seen evidence of these mysterious consulting services we were supposedly paying for. I looked up the business registration for Walsh Consulting Solutions. Owner, Jennifer Walsh, Kevin's wife. My hands were steady as I scrolled through the payment history, but inside I was furious. These people had been stealing from us for years, right under my nose. Every month, like clockwork, Jennifer Walsh's company would submit an invoice for services that never happened, and Kevin would approve payment with my department's budget. I kept digging and found more. Chicago Leadership Development. Another vendor with vague services and no deliverables. $22,000 over 2 years for executive coaching sessions that nobody in our department had ever attended. Then Professional Training Associates, $31,000 for skills development workshops that apparently took place in an alternate dimension, because they sure hadn't happened in our reality. I started a spreadsheet, methodically tracking every suspicious payment. 3 years of systematic theft. 3 years of money that should have gone to bonuses, equipment upgrades, training, and fair compensation for people who worked their tails off. The total made me sick. $180,000. Stolen from hard-working people who trusted their manager to look out for them. I thought about Michelle, a single mom who'd been asking about a raise for months. I thought about Sean Murphy, who'd been passed over for promotion twice while Kevin claimed budget constraints. I thought about my own daughter Ashley, starting her senior year at Northwestern, and how I'd been planning to help more with her tuition, but couldn't because my salary hadn't kept up with costs. All of us getting screwed while Kevin and his wife lived high on money stolen from their own employees. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, just thinking. I had a choice to make. I could pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen, keep my head down, and hope things would get better on their own. Or I could do what my Army training had taught me, protect the people under my command, no matter the personal cost. The choice was easier than it should have been. That night I called my wife Sarah from the car before heading home. I needed to talk this through with someone who knew me well enough to tell me if I was being stupid. Sarah, I found something at work. Something bad. How bad? Her voice immediately shifted to that serious tone she gets when she knows I'm not talking about normal. Office politics. Criminal bad. Kevin's been stealing from the company. From our bonuses, our budgets, everything. We're talking about $180,000 over 3 years. She was quiet for a moment, processing. What are you going to do? What I have to do? Another pause. Brian, you know this could cost you your job. We've got Ashley's tuition, the mortgage, everything. Yeah. But doing nothing would cost me something more important. I heard her sigh. The kind of sigh that means she already knows what I've decided, but wants to make sure I've thought it through. You're going to do the right thing, aren't you? I learned that in the Army. Some things are worth the risk. Okay, she said, and I could hear the support in her voice, even though I knew she was scared. But be smart about it. Document everything. And don't go in there guns blazing until you're absolutely sure. The next morning, I got to the office an hour early. I wanted to print everything before people started arriving. Bank records, invoices, vendor registrations, payment approvals. I organized it like a military briefing, the way my commanding officer taught me in Afghanistan. Clear, chronological, undeniable. I was just finishing when Kevin showed up. He always came in early to check his emails before anyone else arrived. He stopped by my office, coffee in hand, wearing that expensive suit and new Rolex I now realized we'd probably paid for. Morning, Brian. You're here early. Just catching up on some vendor reviews, I said, not looking up from my computer. Vendor reviews? I could hear the slight change in his tone, the way it tightened just a fraction. Year-end reconciliation, making sure all our payments match up with services received. He stepped into my office without being invited and closed the door. Is there a problem? I looked at him then. Really looked at him. Kevin Walsh, 45 years old, Harvard MBA, the guy who'd been my boss for 6 years, the guy who'd given me performance reviews, approved my vacation requests, and sat across from me in budget meetings while systematically robbing everyone who worked for him. Walsh Consulting Solutions, I said quietly. Chicago Leadership Development. Professional Training Associates. His face didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten. What about them? Services we paid for but never received, from companies connected to you. That's a serious accusation, Brian. It's not an accusation. It's a finding. He sat down in the chair across from my desk, uninvited. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Those are legitimate business expenses. For what? When did Jennifer's consulting company ever do work for us? When did anyone in this department attend leadership development sessions? Show me one employee who benefited from these professional training programs. The mention of Jennifer's name hit him like a slap. He'd probably thought I didn't know about that connection. You've been busy, he said, his voice getting colder. I've been doing my job. Kevin leaned forward, dropping any pretense of friendliness. You need to be very careful here, Brian. These are serious accusations you're making, the kind that can destroy careers. You're right about that. I've been with this company for 12 years. I have relationships upstairs. You're 47 years old with a daughter in college. Do you really want to bet your family's future on some paperwork discrepancy? That's where he made his mistake. The threat was obvious enough, but bringing up Ashley crossed a line. In the Army, you learn that when someone threatens your family, the conversation is over. Now it's just about tactics. Get out of my office, I said quietly. Think about what you're doing. Think about your career. Think about Ashley's tuition bills. I said get out. He stood up slowly, straightening his expensive tie. You're making a very big mistake, Brian. A career-ending mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you for 6 years. After he left, I sat there for a few minutes, feeling my heart rate settle back to normal. Then I picked up my phone and called Lucas Reed, our external auditor. Lucas and I had served together in Afghanistan, and he was the one person I knew who would understand both the financial and ethical dimensions of what I'd found. Lucas, it's Brian. I need to talk to you about something serious. Can you meet me for lunch? Sure. Everything okay? No. Not even close. We met at a diner downtown, away from the office and away from corporate ears. I laid out everything I'd found, showing him copies of the documents on my laptop. Lucas whistled low when I finished. Brian, this isn't just theft. This is wire fraud, federal charges. Kevin's looking at serious prison time if this gets prosecuted. Good. But you need to be careful how you handle this. Companies sometimes prefer to handle these things quietly, internally. They don't always want the publicity of criminal charges. What do you mean? I mean they might offer Kevin a chance to resign quietly, pay back money, sign a non-disclosure agreement, keep it out of the papers. The thought made me angry. So he just walks away? What about the people he stole from? That's why you need to go straight to the top. Not HR, not Kevin's boss. The CEO. Make it clear this isn't just about money, it's about justice. That afternoon, I called Diana Price, the CEO's executive assistant. Diana had always been professional, but approachable. One of those people who actually cared about doing the right thing. Diana, I need to see him immediately. It's about financial irregularities that require his personal attention. How serious are we talking, Brian? Federal crime serious. There was a pause. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. 8 minutes later, my phone rang. He'll see you at 4 p.m. Bring whatever documentation you have. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing, organizing my evidence one more time. This was it. Once I walked into that office, there was no going back. At 4 p.m. sharp, I walked into the CEO's office with my folder of evidence. Diana had warned him it was serious, so he was already seated with his legal pad ready, sleeves rolled up like he was preparing for battle. Brian, Diana says this is about financial irregularities. What are we dealing with? I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I opened my folder and laid it out systematically, the way I'd been trained to brief commanding officers. Sir, we have systematic fraud in my department. 3 years of stolen funds totaling $180,000. His eyebrows went up. That's a serious allegation. Walk me through it. I showed him the bonus allocation versus actual payouts, then the fake vendor invoices, then the business registration showing Jennifer Walsh as owner of the consulting companies. By the time I reached the bank records showing regular payments for non-existent services, his expression had gone from skeptical to furious. Kevin approved all of these? Every single one. Here are his digital signatures on the approval forms. The CEO studied the documents, flipping back and forth between pages. Walsh Consulting Solutions. Same last name. His wife's company. They've been billing us monthly for services that never happened. Employee engagement programs, leadership development, training workshops, none of it real. And the other vendors? Shell companies. Same pattern, same non-existent services, same systematic theft. He was quiet for a long moment, just staring at the numbers. Finally, he looked up. Brian, I need to ask this directly. Are you absolutely certain about these allegations? Because once we start this process, there's no going back. Sir, I'm not making allegations. I'm reporting facts. The money trail is clear, the vendor connections are documented, and the services were never delivered. This isn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It's deliberate fraud. He nodded slowly. What do you recommend? Immediate suspension pending investigation. Freeze all vendor payments. Contact external auditors and— Sir? This is federal wire fraud. We should involve law enforcement. Diana knocked and entered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Kevin Walsh is asking to see you. Says it's urgent. The CEO and I looked at each other. Send him in, he said. Kevin walked in confident, probably thinking he could charm his way out of whatever trouble he thought he was in. His confidence evaporated the moment he saw me sitting there with documents spread across the CEO's desk. Brian, he said carefully. I didn't expect to see you here. I bet you didn't. The CEO gestured to a chair. Kevin, we need to discuss some financial discrepancies Brian has brought to my attention. Kevin sat down, his eyes darting between the CEO and the documents. I'm sure there's an explanation for whatever Brian thinks he's found. Walsh Consulting Solutions, the CEO said simply. Kevin's face went pale. That's a legitimate vendor. Owned by your wife. There's nothing improper about that. We followed proper procurement procedures. I couldn't help myself. What procurement procedures? Show me the RFP. Show me the competitive bids. Show me the deliverables. Brian, you're clearly misunderstanding. I understand that you've stolen $180,000 from this company and your employees over 3 years. The CEO held up his hand. Kevin, I need you to explain these payments. What services did Walsh Consulting provide? Kevin started talking fast, spinning a story about employee morale consulting and performance optimization strategies. It was impressive, actually. If I hadn't known the truth, his explanation might have sounded plausible. But the CEO wasn't buying it. Where are the reports? Where are the employee feedback surveys? Where are the measurable improvements these expensive consultations supposedly delivered? Kevin's story fell apart under basic questions. When he couldn't produce any evidence of actual work, the CEO made the call I'd hoped he would. Kevin, you're suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. All vendor payments are frozen as of now. This is ridiculous, Kevin said, standing up. You're taking the word of a disgruntled employee who's upset about his bonus. That's when I knew he still didn't understand how much trouble he was in. Kevin, this isn't about my bonus. This is about $180,000 in documented fraud. This is about lying to your employees while stealing their money. Security arrived within minutes. As they escorted Kevin out, he turned back to the CEO. "You'll regret this. I'll fight these baseless accusations." After he left, the CEO sat back in his chair. "Diana, get our legal team in here immediately and contact the federal authorities. If Brian's right about the wire fraud aspect, we need to report this properly." Over the next week, everything moved fast. Federal investigators arrived Tuesday. External auditors took over Wednesday. By Friday, they'd confirmed everything I'd found and discovered additional irregularities I'd missed. The real kicker came when they traced the money. Kevin and Jennifer hadn't just stolen from our department. They'd been running similar scams with vendor payments across 3 other divisions. The total theft was closer to $340,000. Michelle stopped by my office Thursday afternoon. "Brian, is it true? Did Kevin really steal our bonuses?" "It's true. All of it." She sat down heavily. "For how long?" 3 years that I can prove. Maybe longer." I knew something was wrong. Every year the promises about better bonuses next year, better equipment next year, better everything next year. And every year nothing. Sean Murphy joined us, along with the rest of the team. Word had gotten around, and everyone wanted answers. "What happens now?" asked Jordan Mills from accounting. "Justice," I said. "Real bonuses, back pay for what was stolen, and Kevin facing criminal charges." The team looked relieved, but also angry. 3 years of being told to be grateful for scraps while their manager lived high on stolen money. That Friday, the CEO called an all-hands meeting. He announced Kevin's termination, the discovery of the fraud, and the company's commitment to making employees whole. Every person in my department would receive their proper bonuses, $2,500 each instead of $75, plus interest. But more importantly, Kevin Walsh was facing federal charges. This wasn't just an internal disciplinary action. This was real consequences for real crimes. As I watched my team's faces during that announcement, I knew I'd made the right choice. 3 months later, Kevin Walsh was in federal custody facing wire fraud charges that could put him away for 10 years. Jennifer Walsh's consulting companies were shut down, their assets frozen to help recover the stolen money. The FBI investigation had expanded beyond our company. Apparently, the Walshes had been running similar scams at Kevin's previous employers. I was sitting in the CEO's office again, but this time the conversation was very different. "Brian, we want to offer you Kevin's position. Regional Director, full authority over financial operations for the Midwest Division." I'd been expecting this. The company needed someone they could trust in that role, and I'd proven I could spot problems before they became disasters. What about the team dynamics? Some people might think I sold out Kevin to get his job. The CEO shook his head. "Nobody thinks that. They think you saved their careers and protected their livelihoods. There's a difference." He was right. Over the past months, I'd watched my team members get their lives back on track. Michelle got the raise she'd been promised for 2 years, plus a promotion to senior finance manager. Sean Murphy finally got moved up to assistant controller. Jordan Mills started the master's program he'd been putting off because he couldn't afford it. But the real vindication came from watching them trust the system again. For 3 years, they'd been told to work harder for rewards that never came. Now they knew their efforts would be recognized fairly. "There's one condition," I told the CEO. "Full transparency on all vendor relationships. No payments over $1,000 without dual approval. Quarterly audits of all recurring services." Done. Anything else? Real performance reviews tied to real bonuses. No more fake budget constraints when the company's making record profits. He smiled. "I think we can manage that." That evening, I called Ashley from my new office. She was in her final semester at Northwestern, preparing for law school applications. Dad, I heard about your promotion. Congratulations. Thanks, sweetheart. How's the LSAT prep going? Good, but I've been thinking about something. This whole situation with your old boss, it reminded me why I want to be a prosecutor. People like him need to face consequences. I felt a surge of pride. That's exactly the right reason to go into law. You could have just kept quiet, avoided all the stress and drama. Why didn't you? It was a good question. One I'd been asking myself for months. Because someone had to speak up for the people who couldn't speak up for themselves. And because staying quiet would have made me part of the problem. I'm proud of you, Dad. Those 4 words meant more than any promotion or bonus ever could. Sarah was waiting when I got home, with a bottle of wine and my favorite dinner. She'd been my anchor through the whole ordeal, supporting my decision even when it put our financial security at risk. So, Regional Director Foster, she said, raising her glass. How does it feel? Scary. Exciting. Like I've got 200 people depending on me to do this right. You will. You've proven that. We ate dinner and talked about the future. About Ashley's law school plans. About maybe taking that vacation to Ireland we'd been postponing for years. About the relief of not having to worry about job security anymore. But mostly, we talked about what I'd learned. The hardest part wasn't exposing Kevin, I told her. It was realizing how long I'd let it go on. How many times I'd seen red flags and convinced myself there was probably a good explanation. You couldn't have known. I could have asked harder questions. I could have demanded to see the deliverables from those consulting companies. I could have spoken up sooner. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Brian, you can't protect everyone from everything. But when it mattered most, you did the right thing. 6 months after Kevin's arrest, I ran into Lucas Reed at a conference in Detroit. He'd been following the case through his law enforcement contacts. Your boy Kevin pled guilty last week, he told me over coffee. 12 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. He's looking at 7 to 10 years federal time. Good, I said. And I meant it. Jennifer, too. She got 3 years for her part in the conspiracy. What about restitution? Full recovery. The company's getting every penny back, plus damages. Your employees are getting made whole with interest. We sat quietly for a moment. Lucas had seen enough white-collar crime to know that outcomes like this were rare. You know what the difference was? He asked. Between this case and all the ones that get swept under the rug? What? Someone with integrity was willing to risk everything to do what was right. Most people just keep their heads down and hope someone else will handle it. That conversation stayed with me. It crystallized something I'd been thinking about for months. Leadership isn't about climbing the ladder. It's about making sure the people below you have a ladder to climb too. When you've served your country, you understand that protecting your team's livelihood isn't just part of the job description. It becomes a mission, and missions don't get abandoned just because they're dangerous. Real leadership means being willing to sacrifice your own comfort for your team's welfare. It means speaking truth to power, even when power doesn't want to hear it. It means understanding that your authority exists to serve others, not yourself. The $75 bonus that started this whole thing sits framed on my office wall now. Not as a reminder of the insult, but as a reminder of the moment I decided to stop accepting what diminishes the people who trust me to lead them. Some battles are worth fighting, even when the personal cost is high. Especially then. When you've got people depending on you, their dignity becomes your responsibility, and their trust becomes your most valuable asset. Everything else is just paperwork and paychecks. But protecting that trust? That's what separates real leaders from the people who just happen to sit in the corner office.